Hello, hello. We are back for another Flash Talk with Pepin. And today, joining us here, we have Leslie Sam. Leslie's an experienced clinical research and quality professional with over 20 years of expertise in the clinical trial field. She's been deeply passionate about, just discussing any clinical trial topics, and has done a lot of great accomplishments throughout her career. So I'm super excited about today's conversation. I hope you are as well, as Leslie has a lot of insights to share with us. So, yeah, we'll get started. And hi, Leslie, how are you doing today?
Thank you so much, Mabel, and thank you everyone for the invitation to join the team today. I'm really looking forward to the conversation about what moves me and what drives me to do what I do. I've been doing this a long time, and we're all kind of in the position where, we enjoy being paid for what makes us happy. So I'm here today to share with you some of my experiences and insights that I've had along the way.
Yeah, that's great to hear. That's what we need. Yeah, so I guess starting off, why don't you tell us a couple more things about, your background, and maybe something unique that you want the audience here to know?
Started out as a hearing scientist many, many years ago, doing cochlear implant research at one of the major pediatric hospitals before it was approved. Then I moved into the pharma side of the industry. Started out as a CRA, and I can tell you that was one of my most favorite jobs that I've had. I just got
Ooh.
a lot of experience doing a lot of pieces and touching a lot of different areas within the clinical development, clinical operations enterprise. Then I moved on into clinical into quality, and then I also became a certified Six Sigma black belt. So and that's really not about martial arts for those of you who maybe think that's what it is. It's about using a proven methodology to drive improvement. So applying this methodology to make clinical trials, in my case, better. So that's where kind of my part of my passion comes from. The last part of my years in major big pharma was spent in the quality organization, leading and driving improvements throughout not just the company that I was working for at the time, but was heavily involved as well in the industry and various industry organizations, advocacy, and looking for those opportunities to apply my Six Sigma, to apply my clinical operations, to apply my clinical quality background to make things better for clinical research and how clinical research is done, how it's perceived, as well as, most importantly, how it's received by those people that will benefit the most. So
Yeah,
that's kind of a
sounds
little
great.
bit about me. For the past 5 years, I've been an independent consultant, working primarily with companies of various sizes to do, again, what really drives me is help them make their processes improvements so that they can deliver on their promises to the patients and families who are eagerly awaiting those important medicines and therapies to make their lives better.
Yeah, no, that sounds like an absolutely beautiful journey. And I think you started out in this space and stayed in this space for so many years. So I'm curious if, anything in your past experiences or personal experiences, or is there anything you witnessed that sort of led you to, a career in clinical research?
Maybe not necessarily my career, but just like that keeps me going, right?
Right,
Those
right,
days
yes.
we all have them. We're
Mhm.
like, oh, I don't know, I'm not sure. But
Yeah.
really, early on in my career, I had the opportunity to work on a really important psychotic drug, major drug company, and we had patients in this clinical trial who were not functional at all. Like didn't have a job, weren't
Mhm.
relationships weren't really working well, couldn't live independently, and with the advent of this drug, they were able to hold down jobs, having relationships, living independently, and so on. And it's those kind of exciting stories that I get to witness and hear about. Helping people overcome their challenges that really kind of makes me want to keep doing what I do. But I've always, to get back to your question about what really kind of sparked that interest, I've
Mhm.
always been a puzzle solver. How can I
Mm.
take this piece of the puzzle and make it fit so that it will serve the greater good, that bigger puzzle picture, right? So looking for those opportunities to solve puzzles. So whether it's through clinical research, whether it's through a Sudoku puzzle, right? I just like to do puzzles. Like, yeah.
That's super great. That's awesome. Yeah, I think I really like what you said about the story piece, and I think especially at Pepin, that's all. what we are about. It's hearing people's stories and trying to, sort of share that story with more people. So yeah, from I guess your involvement with Pepin, how do you think you sort of resonate with Pepin's mission?
Pepin, right? So it's people
Yes,
empowering,
people.
inclusiveness,
Yes,
right?
yes,
So that's what we're here for.
yeah.
Um, in everything that we do, but more specifically clinical research. And it's all about
Mhm.
taking what I know from my experiences about clinical research and how it's benefited me and people around me to share that information with other people. So to broaden the awareness so that people have an understanding that clinical trials could help you as another option, not the only option, but as an option. And we here at Pepin are positioning ourselves to provide those tools and that understanding so that people can then take action. So it's moving from the level of engagement and then creating that understanding with the available resources and tools that we're offering so that people are empowered to take their own health and health advocacy into their own hands so that they can do that's best for them and their families and those that they care about. So that's kind of my vision and my passion and how I feel I can bring my efforts and my interest and my passion to what Pepin is all about.
Yeah, no, of course. That's very well said. And I think empowerment is a big part of a big piece of the puzzle here.
Right.
So yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think Pepin, still very new and we're still trying to work through a lot of challenges. But there's been a lot of support from, people like you, and that's been really, really great. Um, I'm wondering, sort of in your work, in your experience, what has been some of the biggest challenges you see in improving diversity or inclusiveness in clinical research.
Yeah, so I think right now in today's age, here in the US particularly, but in some degrees globally,
Mhm.
there's the call to action. We need to increase diversity in our clinical trials. But largely, we're not quite there yet on how to make that happen, particularly here in the US. I hear so many stories, "Oh, you should go to the church." Well, how do you do that? How do there's some groups at Duke University that have really done it quite successfully. Or, you should go, I've heard people tell stories, you should go to the barber shop. Well, maybe that's an option, but is that really going to get you what you need? And I think there's just that piece of the puzzle, along with a historic stigma of clinical research, right? That so many
Mhm.
different groups largely have been impacted by. So to
Yeah.
overcome those challenges, and again, it goes back to creating awareness. In so many instances, people aren't even aware that clinical trials do exist as an option. Healthcare providers, maybe through their education, they're aware, but they're not
Mhm.
taking that next step, that call to action to bring that information to the parent, to the patients, to the families of the patient, so that they have that as a viable option. Here in the US, it's just an ongoing challenge, and most recently, I think a situation where many people will remember during the height of COVID, during the early days, during 2020 and 2021, there was the realization that the oximeter that you put on your finger to take your pulse, and to
Mhm.
get your blood flow saturation information, it didn't work really well for people of color. The light and the information didn't penetrate the skin when the skin was a darker
Mhm.
color. So there were false readings, and
Right.
people's treatment was impacted by that. And that's largely in that understanding was known before COVID, but it really became known during COVID,
Right.
right? And so
Yes.
people didn't receive the treatment that they needed. And it could have been prevented, maybe not in totality, but better understood if people of diverse backgrounds had an option to join a clinical trial when this device was brought on market, had an option to have more understanding about this particular device and clinical trials in general. So that's kind of one of the most recent kind of big topics that
Mhm.
was in the news, in recent times. And there's many other stories, but just the lack of diversity and lack of empowerment. People didn't have the information, so their health was jeopardized, right? So those kind of
Yeah.
situations are we're trying to make a difference so that we bring the awareness, create that understanding that here's the benefit, right? You're not the guinea pig. That's not what it's about.
Yes.
It's improving your life, your outcomes, and those around you so that people can have a better life.
No, I completely agree. I think awareness is super important, and we still have a lot of work to do in that stage, sort of,
Right.
providing this information. And trust has always been, a big factor, especially
Exactly.
with historical stigma. And Pepin actually recently did a survey on, patients' attitudes towards clinical trials and participation. And trust was, again, a big topic and a big factor that came
Mhm.
out. So I think in your opinion, what do you think are some ways that, we can approach building and sort of maintaining that trust in the clinical trial sort of design or a process?
I think the time is right. Today, I think more and more people are owning their healthcare, right? So
Yes,
I'm just going to speak very broadly here.
of course.
Before
Mhm.
you go to the doctor, before anyone goes to the doctor, what's the first thing you do? I have a cough. Let me look online to see what I think it could be, right? So we want to be our own advocate, right? But are we
Mhm.
doing enough as an ecosystem to provide those people that are thirsting for knowledge, looking for knowledge, to get them the information in a way that's consumable so that they'll understand? We don't need to talk in clinical trial mumbo jumbo about primary outcomes and objectives. Let's talk in languages that are meaningful to them. You may be qualifying to participate in a clinical trial. Here's these simple criteria, not the 30 to 40 different entry criteria, that you have to be, an experienced physician to understand, but to get people the information that they need so that they can continue to be their advocate as they're investigating, why do I have this cough, right? Let's get that information, again, creating the awareness, bringing that
Mhm.
understanding so that people are empowered to take their health into their own hands and not be so reliant on other people to give them information, but let's make them available and that information available as a resource.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. And I think we at Pepin are also trying to, take those smaller steps to provide this
Mhm.
information and to educate and to kind of increase those awareness in those areas. So yeah, I think another question for you maybe is how do you think Pepin's work will sort of play a role in influencing and shaping the future of clinical research, and what can some of our audience do here to sort of join that effort and help us on that journey?
Well, I think the audience can help by, as Pepin stands up the framework that we've been building for quite some time now, be
Mhm.
prepared to take that information. Ask questions. Ask questions of Pepin. Is there more? What can I also learn? But take that information to your healthcare providing system. Hey, I heard about Pepin. Can we do something? Am I involved? Am I eligible? Who do I need to connect you with, Dr. Jones, to help me understand how I can fit or how we can benefit from this? I'd like my family to be a part of this. So to ask questions, be curious. As just as curious as we are when we're searching Google or what have you online, let's use that curiosity too to inquire about other alternatives along the lines of clinical research and how Pepin can help get me information and the people that I care about the information. So, I think one of the best things about, one of the great things about Pepin, it's not just that one direction, one dimension, what can it offer you, but it's what
Yes.
can it offer you? What can it offer your family? What can it offer everyone that you come in contact with? And how can I make that partnership advance as quickly as possible?
Yeah, like we want this to be in ripple effect for sure. And that
Right,
kind of,
right,
for our audiences here, it's also kind of up to you to take some of those steps and to, share the work we do here with more people. Because there's only so many people that we can reach. But we're also
right,
hoping that you can
right,
join us on this journey to keep
right,
sharing those stories and those spreading that awareness. So yeah,
right.
that's awesome. I guess one last question, we'll kind of circle back to
Yeah.
you. Just wondering, it's a big question, but sort of what impact are you looking to create, in the next maybe 10, 20 years in your work in clinical research?
So I've been heavily involved with clinical research globally. Most
Mm,
recently, though, I've had the opportunity to be the quality lead for a clinical trial, large clinical trial, ongoing in several African countries. So I'm looking to take all of my learning experience, the resources, the knowledge that I'm gaining from Pepin, and to see how I can translate that to my African clinical research and quality colleagues as well. So to
mm,
integrate the learning, the resources, the tools in a completely different environment, so that we're not just focused here in the US,
yes.
but in other areas of the world that could benefit as well. So to take that and apply it again, see one, do one, teach one. That's kind of my motto.
Yes. No, that's awesome. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of work to do in the US, but there's also more work to do elsewhere around the globe.
Right.
So it's great that you're
Right.
taking that to
Yeah.
another place as well. That's awesome. Yeah, so I guess that was kind of the last question. That's going to wrap up our conversation with Leslie today. I know I had a great time talking with Leslie and I learned a lot. So I hope all the audiences out there can say the same. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Leslie, today.
Thank you so much, Mabel, and thank you everyone for the invitation. If you have any questions, feel free to follow up. I'm sure Mabel and the Pepin team will share my contact information with you.
Yes.
Have a great day.
Course. Yeah, we will continue to have more of these conversations. So, you can go on our website and also follow us on social media at We Are Pepin. And we hope you enjoyed, and we can't wait to be back with more exciting content. So, yeah, have a great day, everyone.